What's your passion in life? What's that thing that drives you, that gets you out of bed in the morning, that keeps you up at night? That thing that, if it was subtracted from your life, would leave you feeling lost and purposeless. We ask the new 9th graders at my school this question every year, and their answers are a fascinating window into their minds. Some kids are passionate about playing piano or basketball or video games, or about fixing things or helping people. And so a few years ago, I asked myself, well, what's my passion? And I dug past that obvious first answer of teaching and arrived at the idea of storytelling. Because teaching is storytelling. Teaching feels most electric to me when I'm helping kids understand the stories of the people who made history happen, or when I'm helping them learn how to tell their own stories. Teaching is like existing in a ball of sparks and light when kids' brains and hearts are wide open to new stories. So there's this storytelling framework that I really like. It's called the hero's journey. And in the hero's journey, there's a protagonist, and they start out in their normal, known world, and they're called to an adventure in an unknown world. They cross the threshold, and they encounter all sorts of obstacles. They overcome them, and they're transformed by that experience. Now, obviously, in our own real lives, things don't fall into place that neatly. But humans are master storytellers. We make sense of our world and of our lives by telling stories. And so even though the events of our lives don't always fall in to this pattern, sometimes in our memories and in our retellings, we shape them into this nice little circle. And school is so important in that mythologizing. School is where we grow up. School is where we figure out who we are. School becomes the setting of some of our most pivotal moments as young people, which means, whether we like it or not, as educators, we are going to show up in our kids' myths about their lives. And so the question that we need to ask ourselves is, who do we want to be in those stories? How do we want to show up in kids' mythologies? Because for kids, every new school year is another journey. Every time they walk into our classrooms, they're crossing over that threshold between the known and the unknown world. And kids carry everything on those journeys with them. Whatever they're facing outside of school gets packed into their backpack and brought in and sits at their desk with them. It becomes part of the landscape of school for them, whatever that weight is that they're carrying. So think for a second about what kinds of weight you were carrying as a kid in school. What was unshakable and unavoidable for you? What made it impossible for you to focus no matter how hard you tried to push it out? Some of our kids, when they walk into our rooms, they're grappling with their parents' divorce, or a family member's death, or incarceration, or absence. Some of our kids are learning English. Some of our kids are hungry. Some of our kids have learning differences, and they're carrying around the shame that too often comes with that. Because of trauma, some of our kids are at war with their own brains. Many of our kids are coming in knowing that they're up against hundreds of years of stereotypes that say that they're not smart, or that they're dangerous, or that they're expendable, or that they are everything but the beautiful and awe-inspiring creatures that their families know them to be. And all of our kids are going to also encounter challenges by design when they come into our classes, because that's how they're going to learn. We're going to set up problems for them to solve. All of these challenges will manifest in our classes. But despite all that weight that our kids carry, every single one of them deserves to feel like a hero. That's our privilege and our responsibility as teachers. We get to help kids through some of the hardest things they have ever encountered in their lives. We get to tell them every single day that they can triumph. So let me be clear. When I say I want every student to feel like a hero, I'm not talking about save-the-day phone booth superhero. Those are cool, but I'm talking about hero's journey heroes. Ordinary, flawed people who come up against something hard, who mess up, who fall down, who get help, and eventually overcome. I'm talking about this kind of hero. These are my kids. And every single one of our kids deserves to come out of school feeling like this kind of hero. So how do we do that? How do we make sure that when our kids look back and they arrange the careful mythology of their lives. They see the challenges that they encountered in our classes as affirming and transformative, and not as impossible or oppressive or scarring. Here's me in 2005. I'm cute. I'm a brand new teacher. And you can tell I'm a brand new teacher. It's a dead giveaway. I am hand collating and stapling these multicolored worksheets. That's how you know. No one had told me to work smarter, not harder. So I'm a brand new teacher, and I had made up this lesson for my 8th graders that I thought was real good. And this kid named Chris came in that day, and he just refused to do it. He just was not having it. So as a new teacher, no one had ever taught me what to do if a kid just straight up would not do the lesson. They did not cover that in grad school, and so I was panicking, and so I did the only thing I could think of. I pull him out in the hall, right? Like classic. So I pull him out, I'm like, Chris, you gotta participate. And he goes, no, that's stupid. So now alarm bells are going off in my head because really, no one told me what to do, and I'm panicking, and I figured this kid is going to single-handedly ruin my career. And so I go, Chris, you're being disrespectful. Because no one had ever taught me that if you want a kid to shut down, all you have to do is say to them, you're being disrespectful. So as you can imagine, that didn't go over so well. Chris shut down, looked at the floor, and refused to acknowledge my existence. So, classic move, I go to my boss. Chris is being disrespectful. And my boss, classic move, calls Chris's mom. And Chris gets in trouble. End of story. Fast forward. 5 years later, I'm working at the school where I still work now, and guess who's a student there? Chris. Now, Chris is a senior at this point, and one day he comes up to me and he starts talking about that day in 8th grade, and he says, you were so mean to me. I hated you. I was shocked. I was shocked at how poor his memory was. I was helping him. In fact, he was the one being mean to me, and threatening my fragile self-image. I mean, look at me. I couldn't handle that sort of thing, you know? I denied his reality. I was like, nope, you're remembering it wrong. And it took me a really long time to realize that I had severely missed the point with Chris on 2 separate occasions. I thought I was being firm, and he thought I was being inflexible. I thought I was holding high expectations, and he thought I was being unfair. I thought it was no big deal, and he remembered it vividly 5 years later. See, in my version of the hero's journey, this thing with Chris had not even made it into the final draft. But in his version, it sat right here, as an example of a trial that he had to endure in his school career. And here's the worst part. I was the trial. I was the challenge. I was the monster that he had to get past in his hero's journey. And if that's not the worst thing to realize as a teacher, I am this child's monster, I don't know what is. That's horrible. Despite my idealistic visions of the kind of teacher I thought I was, I missed an opportunity to live my values. And here's the thing, students like Chris, they sit in our classrooms every day. Chris was not an extraordinarily troubled child. He was a normal kid having a normal bad day, which turned into a very big deal, capital letters, a very big deal, because I didn't know enough to stop and ask this kid, hey, how's your day going? Before launching into my big lecture. Students like Chris, they're in our classrooms every day, and we may not always understand them, and we may not get it right with them the first time. A lot of times we'll mess up. But in the hero's journey, there's this idea of a mentor. And this is the person who guides and helps the hero on their journey as they face these obstacles. And that is where we come in as teachers. We are our students' mentors and helpers as they encounter these obstacles, as they overcome them, as they triumph, and come out on the other side smarter and stronger for it. Because every student deserves to feel like a hero. Too early. Okay, so, sorry, I'm also nervous. So every student deserves to feel like a hero. That work is not going to be easy. It's really easy for me to say, but it's not going to be easy, especially when the school year is in full swing. You have a million things to do. The copy machine is broken again. It was negative 22 degrees when you left your house without factoring in wind chill, all right? It's not going to be easy. And it become easy for us to rationalize away how important it is to build relationships with our kids, to say, you know what, I don't have time for that. I need to get to the end of the unit. And it becomes even harder when we remember that teaching is a long game. We may not see the results of our work with kids right away, or ever. We may never know the impact that we've had on a kid. But the work is worth it. For the one time that we make an impact on a kid, for the one time that we let a kid know that they matter, that they don't have to give up, it's the most worth it work in the entire world. I was reading this book, act surprised, called Splat the Cat, with my daughter. And here's the gist. Splat the Cat is nervous about his first day of school. He doesn't want to go, but his mom, as moms do, makes him go. And so he gets there, and his teacher is this wonderful, warm, giant cat. And the first lesson that she has for all of her little cat students is this. And she has examples on the board for the visual learners, you know. The first lesson is this. Cats are amazing. That's the lesson. Now, other stuff happened in the book. There was a moral. I don't know what it was, because for me, as a teacher and as a mom, that was the thing that stood out. Cats are amazing. That lesson was so important for those students to hear from their teacher on the first day of school. It was more important than grades. It was more important than content. It was more important than behavior. You are amazing. So think right now of a Chris that you know. It's that kid who is carrying that weight into school, and maybe it's manifesting as defiance or disrespect or disengagement. How are you going to challenge yourself to recognize Chris's unique amazingness? How are you going to ensure that Chris feels like a hero? This work of teaching, it's magical, it's world-changing, it's really high stakes. The thing we have to remember as teachers is that we don't have to get it right the first time. We don't have to be perfect as teachers. We just have to be brave enough to try. It is one of the great privileges of my life to be able to represent teachers this year. And more than that, to be able to stand here today and talk to you all like this, to be able to tell you some of my stories and encourage you to tell your own stories. Never forget how important you are in the lives of the children you teach. You are amazing. Thank you for being teachers.